Good afternoon and welcome to the Wednesday, February 26th meeting of the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority Community Oversight Committee. Chair McCauley has called the meeting to order and we are now beginning with roll call. Jenny Biggs will not be with us today and Jennifer Howard is no longer a part of this committee. Starting with Jim Wagner, are you present today?
Present.
Larry Minikis, are you present today? Pat Randolph, are you present today? Rebecca Suggs, are you present today?
Yes.
Theo Hellman does not appear to be here with us in person, nor is he with us virtually. And Chair McCauley, are you present today?
I certainly am. And Theo is a high school non-voting member of our group. Okay, so let's begin with agenda adjustments. If you don't mind, I'd like to make a proposal in that this is going to be a busier meeting than a lot of them in that we're one of our three major committees, the core committee kind of disbanded due to some departures. So we're going to be doing some of that core work together today. And I am worried that if this thing runs past 5, because it might, depending on questions and the like, I want to make sure we get through this while we still have a full quorum. So I would like to move that up above all the other stuff and just make that kind of the first thing we jump right into, if that's amenable to everybody. And then we'll have at the end the other more perfunctory components of what's on the agenda.
Just to clarify, within the annual report committees, or move core all the way above even the board monitoring committees?
I would make the annual report committees, all of them, local, D-Space, core, financial, the first thing we talk about.
Gotcha.
Because basically we're writing our document right now. We're at the very end of our process. So I'd like to do that before we do anything else, just to make sure we get through that with the concern that we may run past 5. I don't know if everybody can stay late or not. So.
And did you want core to be the first of the annual reporting?
No, we can do them
okay
in any order. That's fine. Doesn't matter. Okay, so that with that, are there any other agenda adjustments?
Does someone have a copy of the agenda?
We'll get you one. Yeah. If you want to take a quick look at it, here's mine.
Well, that's okay. One's coming. I picked up the board agenda instead.
All right. So is that okay with everybody?
Yes.
Okay. So that's that. And there we will, let's begin though. We have a new member of our committee and we'd like to do some formal introductions. We should need to tell you who we are and we'd like to hear who you are. So maybe a quick background about who you are and why you're interested in the MWPA.
My name is Jim Wagner. I'm a retired physician. I spent my career in Dallas, Texas, and retired about 3 years ago and moved to Inverness, West Marin, and have family out there, which was my connection. Everybody always asks, how did you find the place? And that's the answer. We fell in love with it while visiting on vacation several times. Moved into Paradise Ranch Estates, which, as you know, had a high casualty list in the Vision Fire. So quickly learned about the danger of wildfire, as well as the many other natural disasters that are potentially happening out there. Found a very welcoming neighborhood and decided I could contribute by being on the local board, but also serving as area coordinator, which I've done, I guess, for a year or two, and for the West Marin Disaster Council and the Point Reyes Disaster Council. Met Jennifer Howard through that neighborhood. She told me about the good work of MWPA and the COC. Mark has come out several times to visit us and always has been very informative and helpful. So I've always been impressed with MWPA, and when the opportunity arose to participate in the COC, I applied.
Great. Well, thank you. Welcome aboard. What kind of medical doctor?
A general internist.
Oh, great. Well, not a lot of those around here. We're always looking for them. Okay, Rebecca, can you introduce yourself briefly?
Sorry, I was muted. Yes, hi, Jim. Nice and welcome. I have been living in California almost all my life, born here, but only the last 15 years in Marin. Retired here to be close to daughter and grandkids. And got interested in civic pursuits a few years ago and joined the Marin Civil Grand Jury. We wrote a report about being quite concerned about Marin not being ready for wildfire. And that report became a part of several other reports. Pat can tell you more. And that served as the beginnings of the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority. So my interest in this organization and everything about it resolved from my service on the Civil Grand Jury.
Very good. Okay, how about, let's do Pat.
So, as Rebecca said, my interest in this first got going from serving on the Civil Grand Jury that wrote the wildfire report that we hope led to, in some small way, to the formation of Marin Wildfire. I was a high school teacher for many years. Some of these things that most of these people here don't know. Haven't been expecting to do this, so I'm having to think through what I have done in my life. I guess importantly, I'm also a Marin Master Gardener and am on the Fire Smart landscaping team with Master Gardeners. So I spend a lot of my life talking about wildfire and how to prevent wildfire. And I'm sure that there's more, but that's enough. Oh, I'm also a leader of a Firewise community. So my whole life is wrapped up in some way or another in wildfire prevention.
Great, and Lauren.
Yeah, so Pat. Oh, there we go. So Pat, Rebecca, and I were here from the beginning. We're the three that are still around, I think, right? Is it? That's it.
Mhm.
Yeah, the three of us. And I'm with the Marin Conservation League. I've been there 10 years, but I've been involved in conservation for 32 years now. So I was with the Tamalpais Conservation Club and various other things that I did along the way there. I've been focusing for years on water and watershed management infrastructure there. I started writing articles about fire danger in the mid-90s. I found an article from 2006 where I said, our fire insurance rates are going to go up if we don't do something. 2006, I was saying this. And I sit on the Ecologically Sound Practices Partnership, which ties into all of this. I'm also on the Biomass, Marin Biomass Collaborative. And gosh, what else? As I said, a lot of my time goes towards water, watersheds, fire over there for sure, because that's where all our fuel is, and just generally stay involved in things. So that's a very short, quick background of myself.
Who's left? Me. So I'm a retired partner with PricewaterhouseCoopers, a CPA, and when I came towards the end of my career, I wanted to do something in public service. I was involved in a bunch of stuff before, but I got on the Planning Commission and was on the Mill Valley Planning Commission as an appointed planner for about 6 years. And then after that,
John, could you do microphone?
I'm sorry,
Thanks.
I was just further away. And then after that, I ran for office, became a member of the Mill Valley City Council, was on the council for 9 years, was mayor a couple of times. And then when one of the people who ran for office at a later date who was on this commission left, then that left a vacancy here. And I've always been interested in this topic. I was born and raised in Oakland, so I have some, sense of what wildfire is about. And during my time on Mill Valley City Council, I was involved with a number of initiatives which were directly related to this. Also, when the measure was in its draft form, I met with Katie Rice and had some very significant concerns about structure that were persuasive, and that became the methodology where the 60% component of the expenditures have to be at least 80% within each group, so that one group of voters is not supplanting another who has done less work. So anyway, and here I sit. I'm also on the flood zone 3. So, okay. So flood zone 3, one of the flood districts. Okay. So that's that. I guess now we're going to move directly into the annual report committee. So what's gone on is we had subcommittees following the Brown Act that had done each of the 3 major tracks, the local, DSpace, and core track. The core track team got a little disconnected, so we have now collectively decided we're going to do it together. And then there's also the financial report. So local has been looked at once. Local was basically done by Rebecca. So maybe we can just very quickly go through that and see whether there are any comments from other team members with regards to the current version of local, which was in the agenda.
And Rebecca, would it be helpful if I did a screen share of the local report?
Yeah, I think it might.
Okay.
Thanks. I'll say that from last month, there's a little bit of change in the wording. You'll see a couple of highlighted sentences. Those are the major findings as they relate to what we said in paragraph 1 that we were going to do in the report. And then I verified that the numbers that are in the little spreadsheets with each of the 5 selected jurisdictions and the numbers that are in the Appendix A spreadsheet, I verified all of those against where I pulled them from, which are the staff reports that summarize the information that the jurisdictions had all submitted. And I think those are the big changes from last month.
Okay, so what comments do we have?
I will make one more comment. I don't know if John's going to bring this up when you get to the finance part. I did do a quick review of the cumulative numbers that are in the finance spreadsheets that are going to be looked at when we get to that section. None of the numbers that I pulled from the jurisdiction reports match any of the numbers there. So there may be discussion when either now or when we get there.
Yeah, I suggest we take that offline. I went through the numbers myself, and I was able to, I found that I think only four of them didn't tie and the rest all tied. So.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, but
we can ignore that.
There's something, well, no, there's still something wrong. They should be identical. So the summary that you have has 1,998,000, and the summary that is in the work from Elisa is 2,243,000. So we're off somewhere. There's a few things that are off, but I think we can sort that out separately. And by the way, I would like to propose that if I can jump ahead a little bit, that I think I'm hopeful that after our conversation tonight, we'll be pretty much over the hump and ready to do some final writing. And you recall that last year there was a subcommittee that did the final writing that was then shared with everybody so that you can still take another pass through it. I would like, if it's okay, to suggest that we have a subcommittee of 3 of us, because that's still within our group. And, you know, my suggestion would be Pat, Rebecca, and myself to work through whatever final edits we have, if that's amenable to everybody.
I would strongly support that. You guys are such great wordsmiths.
Okay.
I mean, you really are.
Okay. Okay, so in offline, we'll figure out why the numbers are slightly different. So.
And I can arrange a meeting between myself, Elisa, you, John, and Rebecca, I think that would be the best way to tackle it.
That's fine. And we can just do this by Zoom or whatever. The only comment I have on the actual document itself is that there's a statement that says about half the agencies have improved management of their cumulative rollover funds. Total dollar amount is somewhat higher this year than last. However, the percentage of rollover is still about 10% of annual revenue. So in fact, I see that number differently. Annual revenue is
4 point
six-
something.
there, 4.3 million, and we got 2.2 in rollover. So we got roughly half of a year of unspent funds. Jim, the way this worked in the very beginning, you know, everybody was just setting up and the money was rolling in. And then wisely, they didn't spend it foolishly like some governments might. They just said, let's make sure we know what we're spending our money on. And now they're catching up each year, and soon, in some cases, they're actually overspending a current year budget to catch up with their total rollover. But I still think that I would like us to amend our comment in a way that the three of us can work out word-wise that acknowledges that a few of the agencies have over a year of rollover, and they should start getting on that a little bit more. So we'll figure out a way to elegantly say that. But Rebecca, that's a way I would like to see a change made there, if that's agreeable.
I'm fine with that. I struggled with it when I wrote it, because I didn't want to call out San Rafael and just beat him up.
Right.
And
So
no
I-
doubt, another one.
And,
That's,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
see, I know a little bit about. Okay. Yeah.
You're always harder on your own entity.
Yeah, exactly.
Jim, if I can just I know we're pressed for time, but just I wanted to expand upon the philosophy that John was talking about. We don't want to spend money for the sake of money. And so that you got to spend it or lose it type budget mentality. We did not adopt that when we built Marin Wildfire. However, the taxpayers aren't paying into Measure C for us to sit on the money either. So we want to put that money to use. So we want to find that right balance of good projects, but not sitting on the money.
And you really,
Before we go on,
Yeah.
Mark, your microphone is cutting in and out. I can hear it fine, but the recording might be good.
It must be me.
it's got to be you. Exactly. Okay. All right. And then the other thing that we haven't addressed is how do you follow up on prior year findings? And if I remember right, last year we changed our model where every finding had a number on it and was highlighted so that it didn't get lost in the detail. And I would propose that when we do our final write-ups for this year, that at the end of each section, first we take the similar approach, because there aren't as many findings, which is wonderful, but we should follow up on the prior year findings. I would do it in each section and just repeat the finding from the section and then describe what its update is. Okay. And then to give us kind of a quick, just to make sure we're on the same page about it, let me quickly go through, because I was ready for this. Where is it? There. Nope. There. So let's go through the comments from the prior year and just make sure we're collectively in agreement on this. It's kind of interesting because our subcommittees changed each year, so we had different people doing each section each year. So it's a bit of a mishmash, which was appropriate because we don't want them to be standing committees. We want them to be special committees. So if you go through local, they start with number 6, which is updated 2-year attestations. I believe that was accomplished, so I think we're in good shape there. Number 7, the COC should withhold the distributions of future local funds for any member agency that's not in compliance, and I believe you are doing that with Fairfax, right? So
Fairfax,
that seemed like that's happening. The next one was, let's see, the board conduct an annual review of each member agency's expenditure activity level and the compliance of individual expenditures with the tax measure and the JPA agreement. The local funds are not merely pass-throughs. The board may have observations on the efforts of and any duplication but the efforts of individual agencies should be both reviewed and accepted by the board in MWPA as long as those member agencies are in compliance with the tax measure. I don't remember where that ended up. We didn't want local and D-space to just be not focused on by the board. We requested the board formally approve them on an annual basis. And where did that end up?
What the staff recommendation was, before this recommendation from the COC came out, the board would only look at local and D-space at the beginning of the implementation of the work plan. Then they would not get a closeout presented to them at the end of the work plan. So our proposal is that the board will get bookended on that. They see the proposals when the work plan is approved. And then when we close out that fiscal year, they will see the status. This report came out after we closed books, so we'll have to do that for 24,
So
25.
we'll have to write this up as open until this, and you intend to do that when you close out this year.
That's correct.
Yeah, and it's very important to me because you've got budget and actual, and the taxpayers care about actual. Okay, that's how we actually spent the money. There's always some confusion about that, and there's good reasons why budget doesn't always happen, right? I mean, there can be delays, there can be problems with CEQA or whatever, right? But you want to see what they're actually spending in a given year. So that's good. We can use that information about how we write this up. We will consider that remaining open. Number 9, service levels. We said that there's a requirement that if a city was doing a fair amount of work already in an area, like doing vegetation management, like my town was spending $1.5 million a year, something like that. And the question was, okay, well, if we give you this money, don't swap that in for the 1.5 and then move it to general funds. You see what I'm saying? Which is, it's kind of a, budgets
Bait and switch.
attract opportunities. So we were indicating you got to have a baseline. You have to know what the baseline is before you can determine that there's an update. Your documents contain a statement from everybody that says this is expenditure that is in excess of what the baseline was. Have you got on the record what the baseline was?
Yes.
In year one? It is.
We do.
It's written down somewhere?
Yes, it's in our files now.
Okay. So we'll have to, Rebecca, did you review that already, or is that something we should just review?
I did not review the actual number. I just noted that we are getting assigned statement from each of the execs. I didn't review nor did I comment on actual numbers.
Yeah, that's okay. So let's just go back and we'll wrap that up as we go.
You bet.
And it's just basically, do you have a description of what was happening on day one? That's what you need.
Yep.
In order to accept the assertion from the officer that it's higher level.
Right.
You got to know what it was. In some cases, it's quite easy because there was nothing done before, so.
Yeah, it would seem to me that it would be a good idea for us to somewhere have a list of what that was, because we're not going to all be here
Absolutely.
in the future. And someday Mark will get old and go away too. He's looking at me like,
And just sit down next to the Dodger Stadium.
yes.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good idea.
But somewhere I think we ought to list what the
Yeah.
baselines
So
were.
we'll take this off.
Yeah.
Off site, but I believe it'll remain open. The next one deals with our famous Ranger question. I don't did you guys listen to the board meeting? Yeah.
Yeah.
So spoke at the board meeting. It was highly persuasive because nothing happened. So the issue with the Rangers is that we have Rangers who are doing a police function of high value to the cities that they are working in, that deals with homeless encampments and the possibility of wildfire, but we're paying for 100% of that. And we as a group said there's more things going on here. And so our finding, I'll just read it, and I've written an updated response. I'll just read it to you now. We'll wordsmith it later, but just to see if we're all going in the same direction. The police rangers, this is what our recommendation was. The police rangers in all likelihood perform other police tasks beyond ignition reduction. The COC believes that the JPA expenditures should be used for ignition reduction only. We suggest that a formal report be given to the board describing all ranger activities, and here's the money part, and how the expenditures are allocated between the JPA and other activities. I guess we didn't spell that out as hard as we could have, because we got the report, but we didn't have any discussion about an allocation. So here's my update. Staff made a presentation to the board on February 20th, 2025. The presentation displayed the significant value the dedicated officers provide to the community served, because it is really high value. The COC notes that these are armed, trained police officers, and COC continues to believe that they, in all likelihood, perform other police tasks beyond ignition reduction. Other jurisdictions also use sworn officers to patrol homeless encampments without reimbursement from Marin Wildfire. I'm sure they spend a lot of money in Sausalito, right? There is a baseline effort that any city would expect from its police services that is not considered when addressing the requirement that reimbursements achieve a higher level of service. I'll probably tweak those words a little bit, the NWPA thing. The board did not discuss the need to allocate expenditures beyond the JPA and other activities after the presentation. The COC continues to believe that a sharing of cost is necessary and considers this recommendation open until such time as the board specifically makes a decision about cost sharing. Okay, so unless we are in disagreement with that, I'll probably work those words a little bit, but that's, I think where I believe this remains open because they didn't.
There's documentation in the, I thought I actually put a sentence in, but I can't find it at the moment, in our report, because I did review each of the local, in fact, I think there were like maybe 4 local projects that included, maybe only 2, that included money. And each of them either were not, there's a column in the spreadsheet that Alyssa produced that says how much went to fire and how much went to other. And the only, so that, San Rafael did not report. They only said, that shows up that they needed to say, yes, some of this is going to fire and some is going to police. San Rafael didn't report, but whichever other jurisdiction it was that had one did say it's some to this and some to that. If I didn't put it in there, and now it looks like I didn't, I did review that and they did report, so.
Well, as I understand it, let's just take this offline so we can sort it out later, but as I understand it, these are full-time employee costs. So for the person who is a less than a full-time employee, but a, whatever it is, an 80% employee, that all those costs for that person doing ranger activities are paid for by Marin Wildfire, right?
Yeah.
That's what our question is. If they're physically all day on site dealing with homeless people, part of that clearly is ignition reduction activities, but I would submit there's a police function beyond that, and for the reasons I described. So we'll work on it further, and of course, as a full committee, we'll have a chance next meeting to further hash out. But unless there's a strong disagreement about direction, I still think our original observation was correct, and I don't think it's been fully responded to by the board yet.
I'd also like to add that what we had brought up in the past, that it's in many ways a seasonal job. We're worried about fire danger. We're not worried about fire danger now in the season. So whatever they're doing out there, you could say, well, they're cleaning it up for the future when it gets dry again. But in truth, the time we really need them out there is during high fire season.
Yeah, the argument that we would hear is that if you allow them to establish themselves during the rainy season, they'll be there during the summer season. But
that could be an argument.
I don't find it persuasive.
Right. That's how I
think
feel.
there needs to be an allocation of costs here. It's hard for me to tell the voters that they're paying 100% for a armed police officer, fully trained with all police activity, who, by the way, also conducts assistance to the district attorney with regards to questions of what's it called when you cause fires? Arson. Yeah. So there's a lot. Just doesn't pass the smell test for me. So
Although the reduction of arsonists is a reduction of ignitions.
Yeah,
that is a good point.
there's a string. I was very impressed by the presentation.
Yes.
There's clear value there. I just find it inappropriate that 100% of those services are charged to us when other cities are doing the same thing, except they don't have a full-time officer. You know, they're doing it as part of their daily operations.
Right.
And that just doesn't make sense to me. So,
The other town that's doing them is Novato.
right, it's Novato and San Rafael.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Okay. So that was, what number is that? That's, I got 8 screens open here. Okay. That's number 10. And I think that's it, right? No, let's see. 11, yeah, there's a general lack of evidence in NWPA files to validate consistency that personal costs are allocated only to wildfire prevention. Although only 5 agencies reviewed, it was likely information is also lacking for the 12-member agencies. That was a thing where we didn't have the data. I think we're now satisfied that this is working okay. We'll work that out afterwards, Rebecca, but I think we're there on that one.
There was a
And-
significant improvement in our records.
Exactly, right. And then the thing about withholding funds, which has already happened. So that, I believe, covers local. So are we kind of in the ballpark on local?
And what are we determining about, are we putting individual responses to last year's recommendations? Are we doing a response to those and putting them in the section?
Yes, we are. That's where we'll update. That's what I was just kind of running us through what we will say. And the 3 of us will write that up when we get together separately.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So next up is D space. So,
And I can screen share again if you like, if that was
Sure.
helpful.
sure.
Yeah, and basically with the D space, we just wordsmithed. This is same items that we had last time, but we just did a little bit of wordsmithing, so.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other, I have one comment, and that's moving on to the update for the prior recommendations. Any other comments on how it's written currently? I mean, we don't have any findings, so I guess you agree.
I'm happy with that.
Yeah, okay. No, D-Space is running well. I think when when you move to, what are there, 3 groups now, it's consolidated among the 17 agencies. So it's not just everyone's doing their own thing. So it's impressive. It works well and, it seems well managed. So, last year we had a comment about the accounting to better clarify the income and expenses between the DSA, D-Space Alliance, and the MCFD income and expense. We did that, I think, when we got together, right, Pat? I think we did. So in other words, before it was all mooshed together and you couldn't see that it's separated. I believe we did it. Jenny was supposed to take notes, but that didn't kind of work out. So we should probably just take one more check on that.
Yeah.
But so we can say that it has been accomplished, but it sounds like we're in good space there. A good-
Yeah, we have a spreadsheet that specifically focuses on DSA, then we have a spreadsheet that specifically focuses on Marin County Fire.
Okay. So that brings us now to core. So obviously what happened in core is the team kind of fell apart. I wrote up something to give us a structure
Right.
to operate under. And what that represents is, remember like a year and a half ago or so, I wrote that thing about, okay, what's our new philosophy about how we attack everything, or what's our approach to everything? And it was all in future tense, like we should do this way, that way. And we described in a methodology. I took that document and made it the foundation of what I presented, what I'm presenting to you today, which is basically get everything from future tense to past tense. Look at me talking about tenses. Pat should be happy. Former English teacher, to be clear about it. To be clear about it.
For sure.
And that's kind of a baseline structure through which we now need to do the work, which we're going to do collectively today, and then we'll fill in what we find there. So that's kind of how I put that section together. And then also within core, there were some findings within core in the prior year, principally, if I remember, about the gardens, which I'm sure Rebecca can help us determine when we do our update on the gardens. I believe we still have an issue because the signs aren't up there, right? Education signs aren't up, but we'll figure it out and we'll see it for the next meeting, okay? So what I'd like to do there, unless there are comments on the core, kind of the framework I wrote on, that we get into the meat of it, is there any comments about how it was written up? Are you okay with it? John?
I'm okay with it because core's been running well, so.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
good. And the whole idea about core was at your recommendation, we decided that we were gonna look at the smaller ones this year. And we'll do something different next year, but this
Yeah.
year, the idea is let's look at the smaller ones. And we did it based on budget. I probably would have done it based on actual expenditures, but budget's what we got, so let's just stick with that.
Mm.
And the risk there would be core has got a tremendous amount of eyeballs on it, right? It goes
Yeah.
through all the committees. It's where the big money is. A lot of governance that surrounds that. And that's what I wrote in the document. Like there's a bunch of governance here. So even though it's the big money, it's the lowest risk. We've concluded collectively that local is the highest risk because you're giving money 20% of the revenues to 17 different agencies, each of which can have a different level of rigor with how they spend that money. And that's the one that I think has the highest risk. The medium risk is DSpace, but it's organized in these large groups now that go out collectively. You know, so I think that's less risky. And I think the least risky one is core. So each year we spend more time on the higher risk one stuff, less time on the low risk stuff. That's how, right? So that's kind of the approach that we've settled on. So that leaves us with this year. And what we have is the lowest 25%, I think it's lowest third. Okay. And it's how many, I don't know what they are.
About 20.
Yeah, about 20 different programs. And what you've got is you've given us the summary, which shows the spend to date, the budget, the revised budget. It's really what matters is the spend, I think. And what we'll eventually need to do is tie this subset to your total database and agree that the total database spend for core is the same as the spend for core, which is in the financial report. Everything needs to tie to the financial report, what's there. So that's just a task that we won't need to perform, and we can just do it off because it's perfunctory. It's just a, right. Okay. So what I like to do is I like to go through each one of these things. And what we will do is you can go from the spreadsheet to the planning document that you gave us. You got it here? Oh no, where is it? Okay. Which is the Google Doc, which is basically the MWPA work plan for 23-24. So that was what was presented to the board at the beginning of the cycle and agreed to after all the processes occurred, right? And then that presents a description of what each item is. And then to that, you have the spend to date. So we have two tasks to me, I think, I would suggest. One is, does the description on its own provide us with any concern or any like, oh, that doesn't sound right, feeling that we're not staying within the four corners of the of what the JPA and the measure requires us to do, right? So is one of these things like, okay, go to Vegas and have a fun conference. You'd say, that doesn't sound like that's spending our money right? So in each case, what I like to do is very quickly, you put on the screen because you can just quickly describe each one of them for us. I went through them one by one myself. I guess you guys all did, I hope. And then as far as the spend to date, show us what record you have for the spend to have us comfortable that the description and the actual money are aligned, right? So like when you go to my goat friends out there doing the goat work, I'm expecting a bill from a goat guy and not, 15 conferences, right? So that's what we want to do is align those activities. Does that make sense to each other?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. So why don't we just get started? The Vado long range LRAD system, long range acoustic divide system is the first one. There is no spend to date, so I guess we can just kind of move by it if you want. The next one is the Nevada Fire Road Maintenance, and the spend to date's $1,432 for $1,432. My concern there is that someone's got $1,400 they got to tuck somewhere, or they got a budget. They say, well, let's throw it there. So first, fire road maintenance, any issue with fire road maintenance being compliant with the agreement? In other words, the description of what the money's being spent on, I virtually, every one of them made sense to me, just to cut through the base on it. But you can even tell by the title. It's fire road maintenance. That's what we're supposed to do. Okay. So, so what was the 1432 for?
So if you look at the spreadsheet, it was project number 23-04-C-FB.
Of course.
And then I would go to this tab and look for that same project code. 2304, so it was for Nevada Fire District staff time for $4,800.
Okay, so Nevada staff time. So it wasn't, what were they doing?
Actually going out to the roads, analyzing the roads, doing a review of the roads, and then what they were doing was taking that GIS track information, pushing it over into Green Info Network to create the maps for that.
So,
That 4,800 was for the Bahia fuel break though?
Am I reading the wrong number?
Maybe.
Let me double check. Thank you.
2304 CFB.
2304 CFB is, thank you. There we go. Thank you, Mark, or Rebecca.
Or Mark, that's fine. Or Martina, or John, or,
Okay, so that was for the cost of Panoramic Environmental doing some of the scoping for the project.
okay, so that's a third-party vendor.
Yep.
Okay, any questions on that? Okay, we're gonna get a whole bunch of these to do. Okay, so the next one is the Bahia fuel break maintenance. And again, that's $4,800.
22, oh, and that was the Nevada, that's the one I looked at. So we're ahead of us. That was the Nevada staff time for that. And then where we could cross-reference that is a second spreadsheet that we have. And I'm, instead of doing individual shares, I'm just going to share my desktop. And I turned off my, all my messaging, so you won't see my emails pop up on me.
oh, shoot.
That's handy.
Let's see. So on this spreadsheet that has lots of tiny little lines, we would be able to cross-reference through the building codes, and there's a lot, and actually find where that is identified in that $4,800, which going through this, it might take me a while, but it's in there.
Told you to practice on this. I told her I was gonna do this today. So I mean, we need to know what each expenditure's for, right? We can't just ignore it. And if you can't find it quickly, our subcommittee can look
Yeah,
at it?
you bet.
Okay. So you
And I'll
have-
probably, for some of these more detailed ones, I may bring in the Nevada finance staff to help with that, because they're the ones that this is the spreadsheet I'm showing right here is actually Nevada's books.
Okay, and that's why we need to pay attention to this, because to be blunt about it, Novato is both a city and it's also a zone. And they have lots of budget responsibilities. As I recall, the city is struggling.
It is a fire district
That's the city,
and a zone.
Yeah, so,
and the city is struggling, the fire department is not.
yeah, so I just want to make sure that we're not, there's no, I just, that's auditors, what auditors do. So I want to make sure that the expenditure is not just something that needs to be put into a spot. So so we'll leave that one open, okay? Circle that one. Okay, the next one is a Valley Memorial Park eucalyptus removal vegetation, 8386.
This is all Nevada, so. I guess-
Almost all this stuff is Nevada. I mean, they're doing a lot of work up there. I was quite impressed when I read each of these descriptions to say, wow, they're spending their money well. So,
So if you just go down there, the first three letters of the project, if it's NOV.
right, I figured that out, right?
So if you don't want to go through that whole long spreadsheet,
So these are reimbursements where they paid the contractor and then we paid them out. So we would be able to go back into the records and get the invoices from their contractors.
Okay, did your record show that there's an invoice from a contractor?
Well, when I would go over to our accounts receivable. Sure. I have to look at the month for their 2 of 24.
Okay, so I have a proposal. When I talked to you yesterday, I was going to tell you that this is what we wanted to do. I was hoping that we could do this as a group of all of us. We can still do it as our subcommittee, and then report back to you guys if you're comfortable with that, because it sounds like we're not as,
The layers of, the layers of data are pretty thick.
okay.
John, I'll also tell you that another layer is the guy whose name at Novato, who does the finance, is brilliant. And he does a PowerPoint style presentation for the Novato Fire District Board every quarter. And he does essentially what Mark is doing now and goes through the tables and says, here's what we've been paying. So there's another layer of, yes, they're biased, but they aren't employees of the fire district. And they've all looked at this at least once as well.
Okay, so that's good. And so we have an obligation as an oversight committee to be comfortable. Our approach this year was to look at the smaller stuff, not the big stuff, because we think there's more leakage exposure in the small stuff than the big stuff. I think we need to see evidence that there is no leakage. And I'm expecting that generally these would be third-party invoices for third-party activities. If there's a lot of allocation of staff time, we probably want to understand that a little bit better, because that makes me a little less comfortable that we're trying to cover payroll. You know what I'm saying? But if we're not ready to do it today, I would suggest that get ready, because I'm going to go through each one of these and then you can be quick with us.
Yeah, and if you give me a list of which ones you're going to look at up front
All
would
of
be,
them on this list.
okay,
That's it. That's what we're doing. We're doing all of them on this list.
all 20,
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. All 20 out of how many are there altogether?
60.
Okay, so we're doing a subset of the total group.
All right.
Okay, and comprised of two components. One is reading the descriptions, make sure the descriptions don't ring any alarm bells. I've already done it personally. I didn't see anything that rang any alarm bell. Did you see anything? Did you do it? I mean,
I've read them, the descriptions, and I didn't see any red flags.
yeah, I think I was actually basically pretty impressed. So then now it's just making sure that the numbers are actually aligned with the description, and then we can put this thing to bed, right? And I'm hoping that when we get to the end of it, we can say, we did this work and we found no exceptions. Okay. So that's the third group. Then the last group is the finance document, right? So remember that we used to have a track that did all the finance stuff, right? That was me and Larry. And then we said, why is Larry creating all this documentation? That's nuts. And we eventually agreed that the CPA, when they do their audited financial statements, which is the higher level of comfort anyway, would include in the footnotes to the financial statements, this basic information. And the basic information is for each of the groups, revenue, expense, cumulative rollover, right? And that's what the document Elisa's prepared contains. It on its surface, the 60-20-20 is simple to do. You can even do that on your calculator on your phone. That passes. So as long as the expenditures that are on those documents tie to what we all looked at, and that's why it's important to make sure that we understand why the local numbers are different. As long as you know we're in one set of books, we're in good shape there. So I think it's pretty quick, basically, to conclude that the expenditures are following the measure that, and that we're properly tracking. We know where we are, and it's, guys, is it next year that you've got to be caught up at the 80% rule?
Yeah.
And we're really close already.
Only one zone's 1% off.
Yeah. Okay.
Wow.
So that's good.
Great. Yeah,
That's good.
it's great.
Southern, you're at 79%.
The idea I mentioned earlier, the idea was that we were concerned, at least I was concerned when the document was the thing was being prepared, that I didn't want to see that one zone was financing another zone because of their prior inactivity, right? So the rule is that each zone has to get back every 80 cents of every dollar they put in. And we do it by zone, not by city, because we didn't want to be too pedestrian about things. In other words, if Tam Junction gets a fire break, that helps Mill Valley and whatever, so we just looked at it as Southern Marin as a group and the others each as a group. So those numbers all pass. The words are basically exactly the same words as last year with new numbers. So the only question we have left to remaining left is why we have to make sure that the local numbers that Rebecca came up with we understand how they relate to the numbers that Elisa came up with, and then with regards to core, this subset, which represents a third, we need to make sure that the 100% number is the same as the numbers that she has in her report. So those are the only steps necessary to complete those tasks.
John, just a question around how you worded that. The numbers that Rebecca didn't come up with, the numbers that Rebecca put into the report are the numbers I got from Elisa.
Right. So there's some handoff problem somewhere.
Yeah.
Or interpretation, what I'm interpreting as the number that should go there.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Yeah, it should be just one number. Yeah, obviously you don't have your own numbers. Yeah, it was all from I assume it was pulling from the public documents. But anyway, there's some hiccup there. I'm sure can be easily resolved. So. Okay, so let's see. So that is like super exciting. We should say that this report, if we get it out at our next meeting, will be done by March, which is 9 months after the end of the fiscal year. That sounds kind of lousy, but the prior one was 1.5 years, and the one before that was more like
It's
2
an improvement.
years.
It's an improvement.
Yeah, so we're moving very rapidly towards a standing process. We all agree on the process. We know how to launch. And then as soon as we're done, we're going to start immediately to work on the 24-25 year, because some of this work can be done before the books are closed here, so that we can greatly accelerate for whoever the next chair is to get this thing done in a more timely way. Like, I think 4 or 5 months after the end of the year would be a reasonable number, because it takes them 3 months to get the books closed. So. Okay, so I think that covers that item on the agenda, item number 8. So with that, I think we should go back to the front and then catch up with the rest of them. How are we doing on time? Okay, we're 4 o'clock. All right. So I didn't get it done. I was hoping we'd be just bing, bing, bang, but.
Yeah. So what Martina and I will do is we will take those 20, and then we will have a packet for you that shows every expense for each of those 20.
What's it spent? Who'd the money go to? And yeah. Was it a vendor, or was it an internal allocation? If it was, what diligence did you do over that allocation to make sure that was really appropriate time and not?
And we'll just have it as a printed packet for you.
That'd be great. Okay, super. Okay, so that brings us to open time for public expression. Are there members of the public watching?
I think we lost her. Yep, we did.
Okay, so we don't have to go through that process because there's no public members.
Yeah.
Kathleen was here. Cut her.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Okay, next up is executive officers report, oral report.
And I think most of you guys or at least attended a portion of the last couple of meetings where a lot of the information I've been giving is overall reactions and responses to people by people about the LA fires, and us trying to get all 17 of our member agencies to have consistent messaging about this. And so we created a 1-page document where they can all have a consistent message. We did several outreach programs, whether it was through a panel discussion with Stanford, or we had the Wildfire Watch that was hosted by Fire Safe Marin, Marin County Commission of Mayors and Council Members. Did I get that right?
MCC.
Yeah.
My wife always calls it MMMMMM.
I usually just say MCC because I could say that better than the real title.
Right.
Presenting to them. So I think we have gotten to a good spot where we are continuing to communicate a consistent message. And at the same time, as you guys have probably heard, the governor put pressure on the Board of Forestry to finally give a definition of what Zone 0 is going to be for the very high fire and the high fire danger zones. And all of our member agencies within Marin are looking forward to the Zone 0 and having like ordinances passed and then start enforcing zone zero across Marin. Very few communities currently have zone zero ordinances, let alone a single jurisdiction, let alone an entire county. So the track that we're trying to create is a consistent zone zero ordinance across the entire county that doesn't change despite what jurisdictional boundary you live on.
Yeah, Mill Valley tried to do a zone zero. We were at the.
You guys were at the
edge
bleeding.
of the sword.
Right. The tip of the sword is painful.
Yeah,
And
and we did at one point consider whether we needed police presence during the meeting.
Oh, God.
and you guys were only asking for 3 feet, where zone zero is currently 5 feet.
Right.
It's going to be an uphill battle, but perhaps the appetite for that has changed, given that you guys were doing it in
Right.
2018. Here we are in
We did
2025.
get the ABCJ pass though, which was no acacia, bamboo, cypress, or juniper.
Mhm.
So we got that done. Yeah.
Good.
And then we are full speed ahead with our work plan development. Our wasn't our last operations committee, 2 operations committees ago, we had a presentation about our science-driven approach that was well received by our operations committee. And we are looking forward to bringing that same presentation to the board, maybe not as a little bit higher level for the board than it was for the ops committee. But Jim, if you're interested in a science and data-driven approach, that would February or the January operations committee meeting would be a really good one for you to watch. It was a remarkable presentation on the tools that we're creating, both to help create and shape our projects, but then measure the risk reduction that has come about because of those projects. And I'll leave it at that.
Great. Okay. Questions on the executive officer's excellent report? And next up is the consent calendar. So items are on consent are just passed unless a member of the commission wants to pull it from consent, or a member of the public can request it. We don't have to do it, but the members of the public can also request it. There's only one item on consent right now, which is the minutes for the last meeting. Is there any objection?
Oh, respectfully, I'll add that normally Pat will come in with a correction or two in the minutes, so otherwise.
Yeah, but those are wording.
Wording.
Okay. So, is there a motion to accept?
Motion to accept the minutes as printed, as written.
Is there a second?
Pat?
Second. Oh, right. Right.
We could have asked Jim the act, well, no, he can't
No,
because
he
he wasn't there.
So can we do a roll call, please? You will probably abstain since you weren't at the meeting. Okay, roll call.
Certainly. That is a motion made by Member Minikis with a second by Member Pat Randolph to approve the minutes as presented, starting with Jim Wagner.
Abstained?
Minikis,
Yes.
Pat Randolph,
Yes.
Rebecca Suggs,
Yes.
and Member
Hi.
Motion passes with one exception.
Okay, next up are board monitoring committee reports. So I forget who does what. Who does the board?
I am the board.
You are the
And
board.
this time I remembered to bring my notes. In case you haven't noticed, Chief Tyler is retiring.
Tomorrow.
And therefore will not be with us anymore. I think there was an interesting thing on the grants and the direct assistance. The grants, they spent $700,000. And the direct assistant is $266,000. They mentioned the same thing about Zone Zero. And I think that they did talk about the, Chief Weber talked about the CAL FIRE and the release of the local area responsibility maps, the state responsibility area maps, and what does FRA stand for?
Federal.
Federal.
Right. F and L. Okay. Federal, state, and local.
I think that probably I was going to call you up right after the meeting, and then you spoke that they had a presentation about the Rangers.
Right.
Um,
There was an excellent public comment.
Yeah.
By the way, the maps came out Monday, right? The maps, the local LRA maps are out, and they show high fire and very high fire and high fire now. But before they only had very high fire, right?
And moderate
Okay. Yeah.
in the
So,
LRA.
yeah. So I know they're just now coming out. Anything else? I'm just going to fill in one more thing. So I was involved in. The long story is that in Mill Valley, we eventually engaged or convinced Google to do a academic study of evacuation from the city of Mill Valley, which was wonderful. We learned a lot from it. We greatly accelerated our ability to get out of town. Every time I talk about it, other cities say, "Ooh, will they do that for us?" And the answer is no. It was a one-time academic study. But one of the byproducts of that was that as a result of our request, we had every single house located, every single car located. We know how each neighborhood reacted to the exit, and we found there were 3 areas which were substantially slower based on their fire protection zones. I think there's 8 fire protection zones in Mill Valley, and we ran it by a fire protection zone, and we realized that only 40% of the total cars that are not safe at the 2-hour mark are from 3 small areas. And to us, that meant, gee, this is probably not a place you want to put a lot more new construction. So I have a change.org thing I've written up, and we've been talking to our assembly member, Damon Conley, about the idea of introducing legislation. Unfortunately, the state is really very much on the growth zone. They're currently focused on home hardening and the zone 0 stuff. There doesn't seem to be a lot of appetite at the state level to consider actually giving some control back to the people who actually know about, their neighborhoods. So we're moving that forward. I've had the opportunity to speak a number of times on this topic in the last few weeks, and I don't generally have a tough time to cover Marin Wildfire, but it is engendering a lot of conversation. So just to be aware of that. Okay, next up is Executive Committee. Report. Who did that?
No.
Not sure who's in charge of executive committee.
We should put the names next to these things so we can remember who's supposed to do it.
Yeah, it could be that it's Jennifer.
Sorry,
Exact-
I couldn't hit my unmute button.
Oh,
Some difference, but Mark, you just did change for my, anyway, doesn't matter. So the executive committee meeting was in preparation for the board meeting. So pretty much everything that was discussed at the board meeting was done at the executive committee.
Is that always the case? I mean, that sounds like,
Yes,
maybe we should combine them as compared to having 2 separate reports on it.
And you could, but and I'll go a little bit more in detail of what was a discussion / action item at the exec committee ended up being a consent item at the board. And so the
Yeah.
exec committee has a chance to deeper dive into a
I see.
particular topic that maybe doesn't need to be a deep dive during the board. And that was Marin Wildfire sought to join the Special Districts Risk Management Association so that we can have a sustainable insurance provider, because the current insurance provider, I don't think understands what they're insuring right now. And so we felt like we did not have sustainable insurance. So we explored a couple different options, one of them being Bay Cities Joint Powers Insurance Authority and then the Special District Risk Management Association. Both have excellent reputations, but Bay Cities is more geared towards cities and towns, whereas, but based on the name, Special Districts Risk Management Association is more used to insuring entities like ours. So exec committee recommended to the board to approve and under consent are us joining the Special District Risk Management
Just out
Association.
of curiosity, I assume most of this is about payroll, workers' comp, that kind of stuff, right? You don't have a lot of physical assets you have to
No, it's
insure.
more liability insurance should one of our projects, for example, create an erosion problem that creates a mudslide that goes into a house.
Okay, all right, okay, cool.
The other thing about the executive committee meeting this time was there was no quorum, and so they couldn't take any action. They could only say, yeah, no to each other.
Mm.
All right, operating committees?
I did attend that, and mostly it was around developing the work plan and how, and Mark, you can correct me, and how to go about communicating Zone Zero to the community and doing it in an effective way. And I did put my hand up and say there's lessons we learned from Orinda where the whole idea collapsed on them, and that we as residents are emotionally attached to our trees. But
Yes,
people
we
need
are.
to people need to understand that they don't need to remove their trees. They need to take care of their trees properly. So it's not really the trees that are the problem. It's the plants right next to the home. Because in the very beginning, when we started this, we were getting reports, at least Bell Cole and I, about people in Mill Valley removing heritage oaks because they were freaking out very early on this whole thing. And we were like, stop, we got to get the messaging out. And this is kind of along those lines to continue to promote Zone Zero and work with the state on developing the policy.
I assume you guys have seen or heard about that video, right? So we saw it in Mill Valley, and that was one of the national fire study groups rented a big airplane locker, and they put two buildings next to each other, two identical buildings, with the one difference being tan bark in the bottom of one, and I think the siding was different between the two. And then they scientifically threw embers at it in a controlled manner with big fans and stuff to, show what an ember attack would look like, what you see when you're out in these fires. And it was pretty stark. One of them was about 10 minutes and it was totally engulfed. And the other one, after an hour, was still sitting there. So it was pretty effective. It was very convincing to us as council members that we should try to pursue the
Yes.
3-foot rule, but it was just the city, the public was not ready for it at the
No,
time.
no,
so.
and we actually did that demonstration minus being in a controlled environment at Emberstomp,
Right.
using what was measured at, and instead of ember attack, we just lit tan bark in little dots of tan bark and just had 8-mile-an-hour wind, and it burned down the non-wildfire prepared home.
Yeah.
And then wildfire prepared home stood. So we've got great, I think we have a lot more visual evidence of why Zone Zero is important.
Yeah, it turned out the guy was a national expert on that, lived in Mill Valley, as I remember, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stephen
I
Quarles,
think that's, well, yeah, Stephen Quarles, and that's
IBHS, Insurance Institute for Business and Home
That's
Safety.
what it was, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Also,
I think you're going to have more pushback on Zone Zero than you think you are. Um, For one thing, there's still not a lot of good photographs of what you can do in Zone Zero.
Yeah. So
And
I would suggest that since we're an oversight committee and this is not our main function, we're having an interesting conversation, but it's not really within our core. And the reason we go through each of these committees is to get a sense of the governance that exists within the organization and how careful they are with what our mission is to make sure that the money is spent on the voters, what the voters voted for, right? So,
and I do have a comment.
yes.
So on the ops committee, just a couple of quick things. One is that they did decide Jason Weber would lead it for this year. Todd Cusimano is going to be the vice chair. And then they also showed the slide about the JPA-wide proposals. And those are going to be, I think, overviewed and discussed at the next meeting. But this time they showed them, probably a good idea to pull up that slide from the deck. And then they also discussed the fact that the ATC is not a standing committee anymore. And just gave a brief report on what the ATC has been discussing and what they're going to continue to work on.
Okay.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Okay. So that brings us to number 9, committee members' requests for regarding future agenda items. I do have one. I don't know. Well, when do we think that, because we're down 3 right now, right? Down 3 people. Do you think by the next meeting we'll be closer to full board?
I think it'll be quite some time till we have 9,
Okay,
but we do have a lead for Firewise, so we can get up to 7 here pretty quick.
okay. So one thing which is illustrated by the fact that none of us can remember who's in charge of going to the board executive and all these various committees. I think I got the finance committee, if I remember that right.
I have a list
Yeah,
of
well,
who
it-
was assigned.
Yeah, I could,
It's in the minutes, but anyway, my question is,
And I
Should-
have ops, by the way.
should we refresh that at our next meeting since we've lost 3
You bet.
members?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes, yes,
Okay,
yes.
so
yes.
that would be the agenda item that I would propose that we do.
You know, Pat, do you and I step off this year at the end of this year? I know I do.
I do.
And yes, it's you and me, and maybe
I think I have one more year.
we should try and help with recruiting a little bit ourselves.
You mean the end of
Be
this year, as
proactive.
in 4 months from now?
calendar year.
Calendar.
Oh,
No, I
calendar.
have one. I
De-
have-
December, actually.
Okay,
Yeah.
right, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
I think I have one more.
I think you do too.
But I think it would be good for
Yes.
us as members, for us to also think about the future and trying to help recruit because
Yes.
we're having a problem. Yeah, well, no, but
Be
we're,
recruited, but
yeah. I mean, we're down. We're down. No, not in the least.
You were
the
an-
solution.
You were an example of a recruitment.
Right.
So you met Jennifer Howard at Starbucks one morning or? Okay, okay. Then the 3 of us need to get together pretty quickly. I'd really like to get this thing out of our hair. So how quickly can you get your package together? I'm kind of moving back to the item 8, the 9 rather, 8, the rewrite of our, finish of our write-ups. I mean,
Next week.
okay, so maybe let's try to get calendars together to get, to do something next week in either Zoom or in person, depending on ski conditions.
Yeah, and then we'll have it prepared in a packet that can be sent to you electronically or in paper.
Okay, okay. Okay, so I think we're at my favorite agenda item, which is number,
On all agendas, not just this one.
yeah, what number is it? It's number
10.
10.
Be 10.
All right, I'd like to propose that we adjourn.
I don't know. We've got it like 45 minutes. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. I forgot to bring my gavel. Bam. Okay,
Adjourned.
adjourn.
Take care,
you.
Rebecca.
Thanks, bye.